make it to the top. Look at somebody say, I'm going to make it to the top. I'm going to help you get there. Now, you got to know before we get into these principles this morning that you've got to know that without Jesus Christ, you may well make it to the top. You can take these principles, and I could teach this secular. I could go into any workplace and teach this. But let me tell you something. Without Jesus Christ as number one in your life, you may rise into success, but you'll never have satisfaction. Satisfaction only comes when you have Jesus Christ as the forefront of your life. Life has pressure, but when you have Jesus as the King of Kings and the Lord of life, He'll steer you through. He'll give you peace in the midst of the storm. He'll give you ideas when every other idea has run out. When they say you're going to close, you won't fret, you won't freak out, because you'll realize if one door closes, another door will open. You'll never be stuck, because the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the one that has all the wisdom of the universe, He spoke worlds into existence, and He's on the inside of you, and He's only a prayer away. And when you hook up with Him and you get a hold of His Word and allow His Word to be inside you, He'll tell you when to stop and when to go. He'll tell you when to expand and when not to. He'll guide you through every facet and every turn in life. There's nothing like it. At the end of the day, when you get to your retirement years and they pull the plug and they give you the gold watch and you sit in the corner sucking your thumb and rocking up and down on your rocking chair, and you look back and say, what was life all about? But if you've got Jesus Christ as Lord, you realize what life was all about. It's not in the money you make. It's not in the gold watch you got, nor the chair you're now rocking in. It's about the people that you touched and they're going through life. There's a world out there that's sick, that's lost, and they're dying. In fact, on a regular basis, maybe it's just our age now, but you know, you get to a certain age and the people you know are dying. Has anybody come to that conclusion? And you look and say, you know, Laura would say, you know, you remember him? He's dead. and somebody else, you remember him? We used to pastor with him. He's dead. And it seems there seems to be people's dropping off right, left, and center. But those are lives we touched, and there's the people that ran with us. And I understand life is short, and so we've got to get a hold of Jesus with everything inside us and do these things. And He'll teach you how to be the best that you are. So are you ready? We're going to read a passage of scriptures from the book of Numbers, chapter 14 and verse 20. And the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy word. And He says, but also as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord. Now because of all those men who've seen the glory and the miracles which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me these 10 times, I have not and have not hearkened unto my voice. He said, surely they will not see the land which I swore unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me shall see it. But my servant Caleb, you could put your name in there. There's a whole bunch of people who wasn't going to make it. But He said, my servant Caleb will. Because, and here's the reason he can make it. You need to write these things down. Here's the reason, out of all the people who was going through, here's the reason he's getting through. Because he had another spirit with him. We understand that's another terminology saying he had a different attitude. Look at somebody say, change your attitude. Because he had a different attitude, he had a different spirit with him, and he fully followed me. Him will I bring into the land wherein he went, and his seed and his generation, his children and his children's children. In other words, he'll have a legacy, and he says they also will possess it. So what you do will affect your next of kin. It will affect your children and your children's children. It'll affect the people that you touch through life. They all started off together. They're all coming out of Egypt together. They've all been freed from bondage by a miraculous hand. See, what I realized in life, it doesn't matter where you start and when you start. It's a matter of getting going. It really doesn't matter, because it makes no odds about your background. I have walked and talked with a lot of people who came from the silver spoon in their mouth situation, and some lived in hovel. But it made no odds at the end of the day. It really makes no odds. What your background is, the color, your status in life. The Apostle Paul proved that. He was at the top of his profession when God got a hold of him, and he changed everything that he knew over to walk with the Lord, and suddenly his life took off. And here we are centuries later, and we read about his successes. It didn't make any odds. You take Moses. Moses is at the top of his profession when God brought him out and got him in and had the burning bush experience, and then God took him to be one of the greatest leaders. I don't know if you've ever read the historical facts about Moses. We just read Moses about being in a little ark, and they put him in a thing as a baby, and the next thing we know, then he's leading out the multitude. Where did he learn to lead? I can tell you where he learned to lead. It is a historical fact that Moses was raised in the house of Pharaoh, and he was one of Pharaoh's leading generals in his army. He led a campaign throughout Ethiopia, and he brought Ethiopia to his knees and into subjection to the Egyptians. Let me tell you, Moses was one of the greatest strategists, wartime strategists and generals of his time. And God took him at the top of his profession and said, you need to come with me, son. God took all the stuff that he'd learned, leadership, and brought him over into the camp and said, now you think that was fun? Where do you see the battles you're going to fight now? And where do you see the people I have you to lead? Let me tell you, it's necessary. The things you've been through, no matter where it is, God will use it to different ways and different degrees. He leaves nobody out. He's got something phenomenal for you to do. It doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter about who your people was and who your background. It doesn't matter. This is up to you. This is your decision. This is your time. And this is your day. It doesn't matter how you start. It matters how you finish. A lot of people start, but they never make the finish line. They don't put the full stop at the end of it and said, I did what God called me to do. Because one day he'll say to you, when you stand before him in judgment, let me tell you, he'll say, did you do what I told you to do? You don't get rewards because you got the gold watch for your 25 years service at your workplace. You don't get awards because you drove a nice car or built a mansion somewhere. You don't get any rewards for that. That'll go up in flames in a second. You get your rewards on what you done for Jesus, what you were born to do, what you were good to do. He put inside you so that you could finish it and you could run your race. Joseph proved it. Daniel proved it. Came from totally different areas, came from totally different backgrounds, and still became God's generals and God's people. Peter, James, and John also proved your background and your educational system didn't really matter. Please, if you're going to school, don't listen to those last remarks. Just go on. Anyway, Acts chapter 4 and verse 13 says, now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, they perceived that they were unlearned and ignorant. Now, they weren't arrogant and they weren't cheeky. It just means they weren't knowledgeable in the things that these guys were. And these are professional men that said this. They realized that these were unlearned and arrogant and ignorant men. But they marveled, and they took knowledge of them that they had been with Jesus. That's what they say, when you put Jesus first and foremost in the equation and do what he wants you to do. He is the wisdom of the ages. He will teach you things that will mesmerize people. They'll want to know, how did you know that? Where did you get that information? You won't even be able to explain it. It's just God working through you. Now, life is difficult, and your difficulties and your mistakes and your failures will constantly rise before you. Those things will want to distract you. Those failures in your life, those mistakes in your life, those difficulties that you've walked through for most of your life, they'll want to distract you. They want to subtract you. They want to hinder you. And they want to seriously limit you from going forth. They want you to be a lame duck. They want you hurt on the field so that they'll carry you off the playing field of life and stick you in a waiting wing somewhere, and you watch everybody else playing, but you're too ill now or too hurt for to get up and do it. It's life. It's the enemy. He'll distract you, subtract from you. He'll hinder you and he'll limit you. But God, everybody shout, but God. God is right there to give you a new start, give you a clean slate with golden opportunities. One door closes, God will open another door so that you can win in life. They all left Egypt together. They all left Egypt with the same God, with the same opportunities, with the same potential. They all left with great hope, the promise of hope. They all left with the promise of a future. But out of a whole nation, only two was going to get through. Caleb and Joshua, the only two. And the Bible tells you why. Because they had a different spirit. They had a different spirit. They had an attitude, a winner's attitude. I'm not lying down this. I'm going to fight. I'm going to make a way through. They had an attitude. Look at somebody and say, I've got to get an attitude. I've got to get an attitude. That's right. That's right. You've got to get an attitude, a fighting attitude. It was Caleb that was remarked when he turned right at 80 and turned right and says, give me this mountain. Most people at 80 is looking for a retirement home. They're looking for a nursing home. They're pleading with their children, put me in somewhere half decent that they've at least got a television that I can watch a match on Saturday. But Caleb didn't want it. He said, no, see that mountain? He says, give it to me. Actual fact, when you read it, he's at the top of the mountain. He's just walked to the top of the mountain. He'd give you a run for your money, Sean. Sean loves climbing mountains. I had to tell you something. But this Moses, or Caleb, 85, I think, 80 or 85, and he's at the top of the mountain, and he's got this one prayer, give me it. Give me a chance. I'm strong, I'm vibrant. He had an attitude. The Bible says about Daniel, he said he had an excellent spirit. He had an excellent attitude towards life. Let me read it to you in Daniel chapter 6 and verse 3. Then Daniel was preferred above the presidents and the princes because he had an excellent spirit. This is where you're going. If you keep a right attitude, keep an excellent spirit, they'll prefer you. They'll bypass him, her, they, she, and it. I think that includes all the generations now that's out there. I think I just got all the genders in one go. But they let me tell you, they'll look at everybody. They're watching you from the day you enter life. They're watching you. Who we're going to choose, who we're going to have. Will I be his friend or I'll not? Will she love me or not? You're always watching, making decisions. But let me tell you, the biggest decisions is your destiny. And here's what the Bible says. And they preferred Daniel. The presidents and the kings and the princes, they liked him. They watched him. Not because he was a great speaker, not because he wrote nice books, not because he was a musician, but because he had an excellent attitude. Look at somebody say, I told you to change your attitude. He had an excellent attitude to life, an excellent attitude. And the king sought after him, and the whole realm chased after him. Then, of course, the presidents and the things, they sought to find occasion. Everything changed now. They want an occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom. But they couldn't find an occasion. They couldn't find a fault. For as much as he was faithful, neither was there an error or a fault found in him. Man, they scrutinized him. They're checking you out. They watch to see if you're the same behind closed doors as you are in open doors. They want to see your attitude. When the storm of life hits, they want to see, what are you saying? Oh, what more clean the church will do? Are you bouncing up and saying, yep, I'm coming through this, but tomorrow I'll be back on my feet again? What's your attitude? Daniel had an excellent spirit, and it set him aside. This attitude that I'm talking about, it's a winning attitude. You can win in any sphere of life because of this attitude that you can adopt. An attitude comes by what you believe. It believes what we really believe about what the Bible says about God, who he is, what he done for us. When you really believe that about God, now not what people say, no, what the Bible says. When you read it, you find out what God really thinks of you, that he loves you and is watching out for you. It changes your world. It gives you an attitude. It doesn't matter, I'm in this right now, but God's on my side. He's making a way for me. It's what we really believe about ourselves now that we're born again and hooked up with heaven. It's knowing who we are. I've told you from the day you get born again, you need to find out your place in life. Find out who you really are in Jesus Christ. All the benefits that goes with this. It's a Bible study after Bible study. But you find out who you are in Jesus. That you're not a victim. You're not a loser. You're not a nobody. You're not a waste of space. And you're not a waste of time. You're a child of the living God. You're everything God wanted. When he looked down and he saw a problem, he says, I need to make one of him or one of her that can fix that, and launched you into this earth. Knowing who you are and knowing why you're here. I know why I'm here. When you read the Bible, Jesus Christ knew why he was here. He said it time and time again. The Apostle Paul knew why he was here. I know why I'm here. I know who I am. I know what I'm called to do. And you've got to know what your purpose for existing. Why are you alive right now? Why did God keep you alive when others aren't alive? Why are you alive? Because there's something inside you that God wants to be alive and functioning and working in this time that we're alive. 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 9. about God who saved us and called us. He didn't just save one or two here and then call maybe one or two. No, he said he saved us all. He saved us and he called us with a holy calling, not according to our works. I'm glad he wrote that in, because it's nothing to do now with my abilities. He said it's not according to my works, but it's according to his purpose and his favor or his grace, which was given to us in Jesus Christ before the world began. So before Joe Corry ever was Joe Corry, God already had a plan for me. He already knew who I was, what I was. He put it on the inside of me and then said, okay, Joe, it's your time. Let's get going, son. The Apostle Paul, in writing to the church of Ephesus, he said in Ephesians 1 and verse 18, he says, I'm praying that the eyes of your understanding be opened, that you might know what is the hope of his calling for your life, and what is the riches of the inheritance of the saints. He wants you to know who you are. And once you get an inkling, now I can spend a whole lifetime of just talking to you about that one area, how to find your destiny in God. But once you find it, so I got to kick off from this, but we're basically into a whole lot of one-liners just a minute to help you. But there's things I learned, there's skills. There's skills you need to have in leadership. You have to learn them. Somebody has to teach you them. It took me years of just fumbling through before I caught on to some of these things. I want to teach them. Here's the first one. Now, I learned this before we went metric. So we're still talking feet and inches, all right? So if you can't figure that out, tough. You'll get a hold of the principle. It's a principle. It's called the 12 by 12 by 12 principle. Every great leader, a communicator must know this, the 12 by 12 by 12 principle. It simply means that people will judge you from 12 feet away. They watch you when you come into a room. Somebody watched you how you come into this room this morning. They watch you how you walk around Tesco's. They'll watch you how you went to the bank. They'll watch you how you walk your dog. Somebody's watching you. And they're already making a decision. They don't even know you, but in their mind, in their thinking, they've already made a decision whether they're going to talk to you, whether they're going to like you or not. They've already made a decision by your walk, by the way you dress. It doesn't matter what way you dress. But yes, it does. Because people will set you apart. And their brain's wired this way. They'll automatically look at you. They just figure you out by what you wear, how you dress. Go for the scruffy look if you like, but you'll be bottom of the totem pole when they go to make the choice. Because of all your heart, it's the way you're married. They've already made a decision. From 12 feet away, 12 meters away if you have, that helps you, they're already looking at you and making a decision. Before they know you, they've already made a decision. And as you get closer, get into the 12 feet and then 12 inches away, that's not that far away, but now they're real close on you, so they hear the way you talk, they know the way you look, and they hear you, they can smell your perfume. They're making another decision now. They're making decision number 2 about your life before they've even decided a whole thing. They're making decisions. And the last one is the 12 inches, which is so close, it's unbelievable. No, 12 foot, 12 inches, and the last one is the first 12 words that comes out of your mouth. The first 12 words. They'll judge you from a distance, they'll judge you up close, but they judge you straight away on the first 12 words that comes out of your mouth. You've got to learn how to communicate, and you've got to learn how to talk to people. You can't run around, excuse the expression, but a gurn on your face all day. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? You can't. Frank Kessels, he always says, you can't walk around like you've been sucking rust. You can't walk about like that. You can't have it. You've got to smile sometime. Look at somebody say you look better when you're smiling. And what you say to the stranger on the street, how you greet the stranger on the street, the first 12 words coming out of your mouth, they'll have already decided right there and then if they're going to listen to you for the rest of the day or not. Decisions. Principal decisions. They can do it. See, that's why I like these guys out there. We've only got Jimmy with an empty seat. Norman has taken his darling wife on their way roaming round the hills of Tandragee. Somewhere. He's away today to take a little break. But I like to see Jimmy, you had to come through that door over the last weeks. Jimmy meets you there, and Norman meets you there, and them boys will smile at you. They've always... Now, sometimes it's sarcastic. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed this? But that's okay. That's just Jimmy's way. He likes it sarcastic. He likes to say something, but he'll smile when he says it, so you know he's not trying to harm you. And they'll give you a high five, a low five. They'll give you a hug, whatever it was. So you meet them at the door. When you're a stranger who come through, you're looking at the door who's going to meet you. You get real close, and this is why you can't be smelling of last week's aftershave. They're going to judge you real close, but the next words that comes out of your mouth will settle it. Learn how to say something good to everybody, everywhere you go. It will make a difference in your life. All right, now we get into stuff. Are we doing all right? Now I'm going to watch that clock. Number one is this: trust God. We know that. But let me add a little bit to the side of it. Trust yourself. I know people, they trust God, but they can't trust themselves. They don't believe they can do it. I couldn't do that. Have you heard people saying that? Look at somebody say, I just said that yesterday. Yes, trust God, but you can't trust yourself. Well, you've got to. The Apostle Paul wrote it in Philippians 4:13. He says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He didn't turn around and say, I couldn't do that. He said, I can. And you've got to stop this negative talk about I couldn't do this. I'd die if I got up there. I'd have a fit. I'd pass out. No, you wouldn't. How do you know? You've never tried. You've never even attempted it. You'll never know till you try. And there's some of them things out there waiting on you, stepping up and stepping out. And when you do, then you'll realize you can do this. Let me tell you, I can do all things. You've got to stop telling yourself that you can and trust God. God wouldn't have opened that door if he thought you couldn't do it. So trust God, but trust yourself. Somewhere you've got to sit down and dig deep on the inside of yourself and say, what do I really want to be in life? Do I want to do this for the rest of my days? Is this me for the rest of eternity? Is this me till I die? Or is there something different on the inside? What do I really want to do? Where do I want to go? What do I want to be? Ask the question, what really makes me happy? I remember the day I stepped out onto somewhere to do something, and I remember thinking to myself, I could do this for the rest of my days. I remember thinking, if somebody would pay for me to do this, I'd do this all the time. And then I reached the conclusion when I'd done it, even if they didn't pay me, I would do it anyway. It was my call, it was my ministry. It wasn't whenever they said, Joe, you're the pastor. It wasn't even anything to do with pastoral work. It was got to do with leadership. When I stopped out on a stage in front of a mass of people, all leaders from all nations and all countries, and you standing up felt so insignificant among the rest. But when I stepped out and the anointing came and it began to flow in the midst of it while talking to him, I'm thinking, I could do this for the rest of my days. There's something inside you. There's a place in your existence that you'll stand and say, I wish I could do this forever. I wish somebody else would ask me to do this. I wish that there's a dreamer inside you that has got your destiny papers written on it. And you've got to explore. You've got at least to try once. You've got to do something. And as you do it, you suddenly write, this is me. There's things you've been doing all your life and it's not you. This is why you're nervous about it. This is why you're near sick before you go on to do it. This is why you hate getting up and going there every day, because it's not you. You're doing something because it makes money and it makes good money, but it's not you. Truth of it is, it's cutting your life short. There's a real you in there that will bring satisfaction, it's guaranteed, because it's the real you on the inside, but you've got to find it and you've got to chase after it. Here's another one. Break out of the box. Matthew chapter 26 and verse 38 says this. Jesus said to the disciples, he says, tarry here or wait here and watch with me. And the Bible says in the next verse, verse 39, and he went a little further. Here's what I learned about leadership. You've got to go a little bit further than all the rest. When the rest sit down and say, that'll do me, there's something inside says, I'll just wait another hour. I won't go to bed now because I know it's 2 o'clock in the morning, but there's something else I need to say, but I need to write it down, so I'll get up at 6 so as I can finish that. And you waken in the middle of the night and say, that was a good thought, because you're going a little further. There's something inside you as a leader will want you to go, that you've got to learn how to go beyond where everybody else. When everybody else is set down, there's something else in you that will go beyond. That you're something else that makes you want to step up and step out. The world out there would call you a risk taker, but you're not. There's something in here that prompts you. There's an open door, and you got to take that step. So he went a little further. Sometimes you've got to be the first. Here's another one. Think outside of the box. Think outside of the box. What's the sense in just being if you're only going to do what everybody else is going to do? You're going to get your lips done like everybody else when your lips was perfect. Look at somebody say, you've got wonderful lips. But they give you a magazine now. You can have lips that goes over the top of your nose if you want. You can have your bottom lip so far down you can tattoo on it. Who knows? But everybody wants to look like everybody else. Hollywood says, this is the look. So we all shave our head and get tattoos up our neck with Draculas and all. We all, because somebody's deciding for you. Quit it. God already decided for you. And He decided you have the lips that He wants to see. You can praise with those lips. Absolutely. I'm going to get emails from this. I can understand. Woo! All right. Hey, you wouldn't remember this, but in 1963 there was a guy called Peter Seeger, and he wrote a song called Little Boxes, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same. Anybody remember that? Yeah, I knew I could converse with you on this one. We're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same. And listen, when you go to the nations, all the young people look the same. You sit in a shopping center, everybody looks the same when everybody's individuals and everybody's rare and everybody's precious. I wrote down it for me many years ago. Be different. And don't be different because you're a rebel. And don't be different for different's sake. Be different by being you. I don't have to be a teenage ex. God's got enough trouble with that one. And you don't have to be Joe Corry. God's got enough trouble with Joe Corry without two of them on the face of planet Earth. You don't need to be somebody else. You need to learn to be yourself. And just being you will be different than everybody else. Be different than I did enough leadership and been at enough leadership conferences and stood on huge platforms with famous people and watched them try to copy him and try to copy her and emulate him. You could always tell just when they get up in prayer who they hang around with. You can tell by what they're going to preach, what books they've been reading. You can tell. Because they just want to be somebody else. Why don't you be yourself? Look at somebody say, I like you the way you are. Look at somebody say, I didn't marry your sister, I married you. Woo! Oh, we needn't get down that road any further. Here's another one. Am I doing all right? Here's another one. I wish somebody had taught me this when I just started, but I didn't. But I know it now. Here's something. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. If you're afraid to fail, you'll never step up. You'll never step out. You'll never go any further. You'll never buy into that business. You'll never decide to open that shop. You'll never buy that construction company. You'll never buy that plot of land to build that house on. You'll never step out. I guarantee you'll never. You will not step out as long as fear rules you. Somewhere you got to get rid of that fear. And do not be afraid to, well, what if it doesn't work? Hey, I've got an experience. I could write a book then on how it didn't work. But what if it did work? What if it did work? What if it did work? Would it not be the key of something serious in your life? Fear paralyzes you. It holds you in a prison, in a very small world that you're afraid to break out of, afraid to step, afraid to go to Ethiopia, afraid to take out in case who'll say what, or some mosquitoes lying on a bush waiting and you coming and say, oh, look, and attack you. All right. Afraid of failing. Afraid of failing will seriously limit you. Seriously. I had something inside me. I was never afraid of failing. I thought, let's go. Sure, if it doesn't work, we can clean up after us. And anyway, somebody said about stepping out of the boat. I said, you need to step out of the boat. And they said, well, what if we step out of the boat and we start to sink? I said, here's a word from the Lord. Get back in the boat. If it doesn't work, go back to where you started and start again. If it didn't work the first time, it may just work the second time. Who would you be? Where would you be if there was no fear attached? If you weren't afraid to try, where would you be? What would you do? I remember years and years ago, in studying for leadership, I got into a series of books by a guy called Peter Daniel, an Australian guy, wonderful man. And Peter Daniel, and he turned up. He was illiterate. He was at the end of his life, he became a multi-millionaire. And he taught leadership across the globe. He taught presidents, he taught kings. He charged them $250,000 for to spend a weekend with him on the islands off the coast of Australia. And he would fly presidents and prime ministers there. He would teach them just for a weekend sessions. They'd all have lunch together. And he would sit and teach them leadership. $250,000. And then you're worrying about £20 for a ticket. All right, $250,000. But he didn't start off that way. His testimony, his story is, he was a multimillionaire 6 times over. He made $1 million, and then he lost it. He made another $1 million, and he lost it. He made another $1 million, and he lost it, till finally he hit it. But his testimony is a phenomenal one. When he went to school, he was at school, and his teacher was a Miss Phillips, she called her. And Miss Phillips used to say to him, said, "You are a trouble boy." He's 14. And Miss Phillips got in his face one day and said, "Listen, son, you are such a waste of time that as soon as you're able to leave school, if I was you, I'd just go ahead and do it, because you've got no place in this place. Go, you're stupid boy." He said, "I couldn't wait to get out of school." And when he was 14, he'd done a runner from school, and out he went. He got a hold of all types of life at that point, and nearly became an alcoholic and do all that type of stuff. And then God got a hold of him. God got a hold of him. And God changed his world. You know what God did one of the first things God spoke to him? He says, "I need you to go back to school." And then he ended up going to university and going right through till he's writing books, reading books. He said he read the whole Encyclopedia Britannica. Do you remember those? Read them all, back to front. He became a very, very intelligent man that's teaching things. But I was talking to a guy one time many years ago after that, and he says, "Have you heard about Peter Daniels?" I said, "No." He says, "Just wrote another book, Joe." I said, "I must get it. What's it called?" He says, he says, "Mrs. Phillips, you were wrong." It was, "Miss Phillips, you were wrong." And there's another title, and it's called, it says, "A Formula for Handling Rejection." You can go on Amazon and buy it. You can go on Amazon and buy it. "Miss Phillips, you were wrong." Oh, wouldn't you love just to go back and say, "Can I talk to you a minute?" "You were wrong." No, for some of you, you'd have to turn around and say, "You were right," because you didn't pick up your life. You didn't do the things you were supposed to do. I'm almost there. Don't listen to the naysayers. That's the ones that's always shooting you down. "I wouldn't do that." "Oh, I know a man did that and it didn't work." As long as you listen to that, you'll never step up. You'll never step out. You'll never be anything. You'll always be the village idiot. You'll always be the class clown. You'll never grow. You'll never be. You'll never try. You'll never do. And just because it hasn't been done, it doesn't mean that's impossible. It just means you haven't started yet. Look at somebody and say, "I'm going to start immediately." I'm almost there. I'm going to give you number 6 now. It was, work hard on yourself. You've heard my testimony before. I was never I was clever at school, but I really didn't like it. I didn't have time for it. I was born in the country. I wanted to climb trees. I wanted to fall out of trees. I wanted to ride my bicycle. I wanted to go hiking. I wanted to go swimming, even there's no water. I wanted to do crazy things, make bows and all. You know what it's like. I just was full of adventure and full of life. But they made me go to school. Anyway, so I did all that and got through school and all the rest of it stuff I wasn't so keen on. Then I went into trade and became an electrician, etc. Went through all that till God got a hold of me. And then my world changed. And immediately it was back into school. I didn't have to go to a classroom, but I got into his classroom. And from 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, I'm thankful for Laura. She just brought my food up and kept me out of the road and didn't let people near me. But from 8 in the morning to 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, I did nothing but read the Bible. And I read it, and I read it, and I cried when I was reading it. And I didn't understand the book of Leviticus, but I said, "God, help me understand this." And I had a map on the wall of Jerusalem. I had in my whole, just this little wee area set aside where I was meeting with God. But let me tell you, he began to drop and teach me and show me things through the scriptures until the word scriptures became alive on the inside of me. Then I couldn't get enough of teaching. I said, "I wish I'd have went to school longer." Then I devoured books on leadership, and I studied and I studied and I studied. Let me tell you, I study every day of the week. I get it in my life that I've got to find something new every day. When I read the Bible, I just don't read the Bible, I read commentaries too. I've got 2 computers. They're loaded with different versions of the Bible, and one's loaded with different versions of commentaries. So when I read this, I'm looking at a commentary to find out the historical facts at the same time. I never stop learning. I'm developing myself. Most people, when they leave school, they stop developing themselves. You've got to learn something different. You've got to. I heard a fella saying one time that scared the living daylights out of me. While you're watching television, somebody's preparing to do what you wouldn't train for. Television went off immediately. Somebody's training to do what you won't do. Somebody's training. So one day you'll go somewhere and they're doing it, and you'll say, "I was born to do that," but tough, you wouldn't do it. I'm almost through now. I'll give you here's the last one. I had a whole other session, but I'll cut it off at this. Here's the last one. It's called give back. You've got to give back to those who support you. One day they will. You've got to give back to those who think well of you. Look at somebody say, "I think well of you." You've got to give back to those that think well of you. You've got to reach out to those who's got the same goals in life that you have. I don't really read books about evangelists and all that type of stuff because it's not me. I don't have enough time to read all that stuff, but I read the stuff that I am, the destiny. There's people who has went before me, does things that I want to do. So I read their books. And I'm always rehearsing, and I'm always studying. And here's what I found in life. There's two areas in your life you should be reaching up. You always find somebody who knows more than you. Somebody who's doing what you want to. Find somebody out there who's doing it one bit better and start hanging on to them. Read their books, listen to their podcast, or go and meet them. Always have somebody ahead of you that's pulling you up to where you are. And at the same time, you got to be reaching down to somebody else who's not as far on as you and help them. There's somebody that wants to be you. Somebody wants to do what you're doing. And you got to reach back and say, "Come on, I can help you. I can help you." You're going to be reaching up and stretching out, and at the same time you've got to be reaching behind you and pull them up to where you are. There's a thing called significance. Success is good. There's a higher place than success, and it's called significance. People like you when you're successful, but when you become significant, it's different. Significance is when you can help somebody else get to where you are. Success, it's just you have it. But significance is when you can reach down and help somebody else walk through their trial in life, help them to get where they are. All of a sudden, your life will make a difference. I've told you before, I have a little thing on the wall. I have this one. Somebody sent me a card, I don't know, it was my birthday or a Christmas card or whatever, and they sent this. And it says, "You make a difference." You make a difference. I really don't keep Christmas cards, and birthday cards get put away, filed under birthday. But somebody sent this one. You make a difference. So I have a place when I'm sitting on my computer at the side, and it's stuck there. So every now and then I can't help but look, and I tell myself, you make a difference. If you want your life to be significant, you've got to be helping somebody somewhere. You've got to be reaching out somewhere. And one day you'll come to the conclusion, my life has significance. If I die right now, somebody will actually miss me. What are they going to do when you're gone? Is there a book about your life that they could read? Is there a footprint that you left somewhere that they say, I remember being there when they did this. I remember hearing them singing that. I remember going to the office that they opened. I remember sitting there at the office where there was. I remember their smile when they opened the door. What are you doing with your life? Because leadership is making a difference somewhere. And all you've got to do is stop thinking. Develop you, but stop thinking you and start thinking about somebody else. And then you will make a difference. You're going to make a major difference. I got to close at that. I was really halfway through my message because I was going to talk to the. One day I was doing this, and the Lord said, "Write this down," and He gave me an A to a Z, alphabetical order of leadership. Just A means this, B, and I was going to read them out to you, but I haven't time. We'll have to do it at another time. I got to close this. But let me tell you something. Your life has major significance. Somebody is waiting on you happening. Sometimes you wait on your own listening to you. Sometimes your worst enemies. They just know all your weakness and trials, so they don't really understand who you are. But you know who you are. Give it half a chance what you're capable of. You usually have to find a stranger. You usually have to find somebody that doesn't really know you, but all they see is the gift inside you. and they'll want you for the gift. And your life can become major, major significant. Are you with me? Your life has major significance attached to it. You see, it comes from mommy and daddy because they have significance in their life. They affect, two of them affect people in different ways, different facets of life because of ministry. Now, the good thing about you is that you don't run on their coattails, but you'll become Andrew, your own man, your own person, but you will make a difference. Print it out, write it out, and stick it in your saxophone case. So every time you open it to pull your saxophone out, you can't help but read this. There's some things you've got to put in front of your life to let you know who you really are. And it's not really in your talent, your saxophone playing. That's something that God uses to get you somewhere. But you'll affect a lot of people in your lifetime. You'll touch a lot of lives going through. You'll not be really remembered for the songs you write and for the cups you buy and the medals, but you'll be remembered as Andrew, the man who touched my world. You write books. You'll get your instrument. King David played a harp or a lyre or whatever else he plays. And that opened doors for him to get into a place of where he was a king. He probably never played the harp ever in his lifetime again. But his instrument got him to where he needs to be. That's a talent. God has given you tremendous talent, but they're door openers to get you to where he wants you to be. You have tremendous significance in your life. You're going to affect a lot of people in your lifetime. You'll go to places that most people in here would never get invited to. But God will take you by the hand and say, I know, but I want you to meet him, and her. And when you're in there, you'll say things about Jesus that nobody else will get a chance to say. Your times are in his hands. Absolutely. Katie, you're a phenomenal person. God has a doorway opening for you. It's not open right now. You got to keep moving forward until you find that door. But you will find it. And your attitude, you have a tremendous attitude. The enemy struck out early so that he would kill your attitude, so your attitude would be so sour you could never affect anybody. You preserved the right spirit. And because you've kept the right spirit, God will just plow you through where you are. All the things you've done recently, these are necessary things. All the disciplines you've went through are necessary things. The uniforms you wear, it's all necessary things because of where you're going. But you're going to affect a lot of youth, a lot of young people in your lifetime. Your daughter will be exactly the same. She'll rise up and be a champion also, but you lead the way. You're a leader. You're a born leader. You've been taught leadership, and you'll walk in it and you'll move in it because of the things that lie ahead for you. Don't miss your opportunities. Don't miss your moment. Sean, it's not an accident that you're here. Julia, it's not an accident that you're here this morning. People don't come here by accident, especially if you have to drive all the way from where you just drove to come here. And you had another appointment this morning, but you cancelled that to be here. You're not here by accident. We could have been talking about flower arrangements for children this morning. But no, we're talking destiny. God sees the mess. God sees the island. I tell you, this island will one more time be shaken with a glorious shaking. He's now testing, watched over, put people in position. He's held people in position. There's people that run off because they saw war. There's people that got wounded in war and sat down. But there's those that stayed standing. When it looked like there's nothing else to stand for, there's a barren field out there. People don't care anymore. Nobody's coming anymore. I know. But you still kept standing. And at times you had to take a different instrument, a different tool, or a pickaxe or whatever it takes. You weren't built to do it, but you said, look, there's nobody. Give it to me. I'll do it for a time. That's right. You think God doesn't see all that? You think he's not watching all that? There's people that you run with aren't in the runnings anymore. But God says, I've preserved you. And I've kept you alive for such a time as this. He said, it's not over. Galway will be shaken. Galway will be taken. He said, I will drop ideas, leadership ideas. I'll drop ideas for conferences. He said, I'll drop ideas for all like Bible school type of scenarios. Not Bible school where you have to have lessons, classes, but where you bring people in to teach different things from different communities. Different churches will avail themselves of it. But God says, I'll use the two of you to begin to raise up a giant of people again, that we can do something tremendous in this nation. He says, I'll start where you are because you didn't let go of what I had for you. This is your season. This is your time. In Jesus' name.